those in the diaspora and all that. Good to have you guys here. So before I eat up all my 20 minutes, we just want to take a brief time to say from the assets that we have. Okay, so trying to mute people that. Can you please let me mute your mic, please? Abubakar, can
Yes,
you hear me, everyone?
I've done that. Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, so we would be looking at from your selection of assets, what exactly do you need to do? What are the things that we want to work up with the time that we have to just achieve this? So how do I start? Probably let me just start with this to say, how do I hit the ground running? I have done everything, all the theories that we've done. We've landed all we need to know from the security perspective, from all that we need. We've gathered all our requirements. So how do I even start the practical itself? If I wouldn't know, Tony, would you like to take the governance? Immediately I just stick to these 3 lines briefly, then I hit this, or how do you want us to do it? Or you want to talk about the governance at the end of the day?
No, go ahead. We can, once
you're
done with this, I can speak to it.
Okay, so how do I hit the ground running? I need to say, okay, I've done everything around surrounding assets. So vividly well, if I'm going to do anything, first, I must have selected the asset that I need that meets all my requirements to say, okay, I need access to these DBs. I have, if it's some organizations that I say with my colleagues that are here in cyber tech assurance that we've worked, in some organizations we have DBs that are ranking to like 100. You have to categorize it. So you now say for my MongoDB, for my SQL DB, to my Oracle DB, I want to do top 10, top 20 in terms of criticality. So you do your own independent risk assessment and ask for login for those assets. Then you now look at it that my audit work plan, what are the benchmarks that I'm using for those categories in my requirements? So if I have an Oracle DB, what benchmark, what am I looking out for? If I have a MongoDB, what am I looking out for? If I have an SQL DB, what am I looking out for? So once you are done, just select your scopes from the benchmarks, from all the benchmarks that we have around, CIS controls, and NIST controls, whatever control, your own independent, peculiar to your own environment, whatever enterprise you are, whether in logistics, in banking, in cards, environment, fintech, what have you. Then the client software that will talk to, it's important as an auditor to now visit your IT to help you get the client software that will talk to those categories of DBs. So for Oracle, you need like Oracle Toad, SQL developer to that DBs, those DBs that you've selected. For SQL, you need MS SQL Studio to talk to them, then internet and VPN and all that, depends on your security. Then the next thing is to run your selected scopes on those infrastructure, get your test results, and fine-tune your report. So basically, I just talked you through what is expected of an auditor. And the reason is that, Tony said it before, that it cuts across, sorry if I'm running, it cuts across all spheres, whether you are new to auditing or you're average, you always have to note this in your audit work paper. So having done this, where else am I looking at? I will now have to look at this context that I have here. So I'll be giving Tony, I want to borrow Tony 2 to 3 minutes because I think he has a better perspective to it. What do you want to do? See this as your testing steps, because what we want to do is that everything Ganiu, Tony, my colleagues have talked about are basically, we now want to test those controls that we have looked at. And part of the controls you are testing is governance. So here we'll be talking about the controls, the audit steps to test governance, the audit steps to take patch management, the audit steps to test access control, and every other one, disaster resilience and the likes, with different DBs, and we'll kickstart with Oracle. But before we go to Oracle, Tony, can you just briefly, I'm giving you 3 minutes to just give me the governance perspective, the requirements, the steps, and the objective and the steps in 3 minutes. Thank you. Over to you.
Okay. I'll say that and this is just because before we go to the lab, right? This things you have here are more like the guardrails. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, loud and clear. Yes.
Okay,
Yes, loud
okay.
and clear.
These things we're talking about before you even start with your scripting and stuff like that. The governance documentations, they act as guardrails for your engagement. And so even before you start the audit, there are certain things you're going to be requesting for: policies, operating procedures, hardening standards, regulatory requirements, your RACI metrics, risk assessment documentations. And then if there's a previous report that has been done, you also want to look at that report, right? And the reasons for these are not far-fetched. Like I said, your policies, your operating procedures, your hardening standards, they are the guardrails for your assessment. A deviation from these guardrails are what constitutes findings, right? And so you want to validate that management has a documented guidance on how databases should be managed. You want to validate that there is a disciplined approach to how databases are managed. You want to validate that documented procedures are being adhered to. Without these things in place, you're practically flying blind. So the thing is this: if you don't have these documentations in place, not that it makes your job tough, but you don't have a basis for either you want to start running around looking for maybe a NIST standard as your yardstick for your assessment, but it should be a recommendation that to ensure consistency in daily operations, you should have a standard operating procedure. To ensure that you have consistency along in configuring your database. We've talked about misconfigurations as one of the issues we have with databases. Most of the time, it's because we don't have a yardstick for those configurations. So you see that on Oracle Server A, the configuration is different. On Oracle Server B, you have a totally different set of configuration. There is no level of standardization. Now, those are the kind of things that your governance documentations will help you do. We'll attach this or these audit steps as part of the materials we'll be sharing with you at the end of the session. But because of time, I won't be able to go through all of this. Speaking to support, another thing you should be requesting for will be your service level agreement, your license model, your inventory of your Oracle DB instance or whatever DB instance you have. When you talk about license model, with some of these OEMs, they have a robust way of even calculating license usage. Now, this is a big deal, right? Because most institutions have run into problems, reputational risks with the OEMs for using Oracle or DB instances that were not licensed by the OEM. And by OEM, I mean the original equipment manufacturer. You're practically, and you begin to imagine an enterprise making use of a solution that should be paid for free. If you can be sued for it. In fact, there have been instances where institutions have been sued by the OEM, and sometimes they even come with a charge, right? And you could be exposed to millions of dollars because you have not managed this session. In boot camp, we discussed in details on some of this stuff, right? So part of the things you want to check when it comes to support will be the validity of your SLAs. You want to review that SLA to be sure that service levels have been properly defined, roles and responsibilities of both parties have been defined. You also want to find out that you have licenses for the DB instances that you're running. If it's an Oracle DB or MSQL, whatever it is, you want to validate that you have licenses for those DBs. Because of time, I'll leave Sheyi to handle the rest. We're running out of time. He probably has just 9 minutes to run through a couple of scripts for us as we wrap up. We don't want to take more than 1 hour, 30 minutes. So Sheyi.
Wow, thanks, Tony. Wow, 9 minutes. Okay, so let's just see how this control test paper looks like. So we've tested control, the governance control, according to what Tony just said. So what is expected of you when we give you this as a guide? What we expect you to do is, I haven't done your findings, just put what your reports from interviews walk through, then the outputs that we feed into your final report. So this is how the work paper should look like for you. So going to what we need to know briefly, let's concentrate on one asset. So now patch management, for a typical example, I'll run all I need to run using two assets. I'll focus today within the shared time that I have. Maybe Tony, at some point we might need to vote to know if we should stop or we should continue, because I need to just make sure I touch at least 2 out of the 4 assets. We have Mango, we have MSSQL, we have Oracle, we have what's it called? And the like, so like 4 DB. So, but we'll be doing 2 because of time. However, we need to still know if we would have to vote for us to manage our expectation. So before access control, let's take patch management. The requirement is the DB you want to even test. So in the context of this view, we'll be looking at Oracle DB. I want to test the version to be sure that what the OEM has given to me, I want to validate. The audit objective is to validate that the current patch or the current update or upgrade on that DB, Oracle DB, is what is the current one from the OEM. And how do I test that? This is the script I need to test to know the version. So if I use this script to know the version, all I need to now do is I make judgments on the version that I'm testing. And how do I make such judgments? So if I bring up let's bring up the client environment, you all should be able to see my script. The script I showed you now is this and this. The first 2 scripts to test what the patch is this. So let me just close the query that we have before while testing. So I run this script and this script together to test for patch management. We will be showing the shortcut at the end of the day. So I run this script, and what I have here is Oracle 19C is the version of the Oracle, is the product I'm running the script on, and the version we currently have is 19.0.0.0.0. So how do I now know that this is the current version that should be on the because whatever updates that Oracle has given us as the OEM must be current. So I want to test if this particular product has not reached end of life, and I also want to test if the version is right. So the second script now says, because this particular VM was brought up a couple of days ago, on a good day, this second script shows the history of all the patches that have been run on that server, even from inception. So in your own environment, you will see the patch, the version, and possibly the date. It depends on what you have configured. So to tell you the version and the date it was done in the organization. So what the next thing you just need to do, haven't done this, is to now go to the site as we have it here, where you'll be able to now say, okay, if it is 19.0.0.0, is this the latest patch? And you can see what I have on my screen here is basically from the Oracle site, and I can see everything about the patch update. The current patch update is 19.14.0.0.1. That was provisioned on the 18th of January 2022. So which means that your output is not what it should be, because this is the latest update from January. And if you are auditing in May or in June, you should know by your patch management policy, the window period should be probably a month or 2 weeks. So if it is non-compliance, and that basically takes you to that conclusion that your Oracle DB is not the current version. And basically that tests your the patch management that you need to do. So the next thing is, I haven't talked about that. Let's move straight to, sorry, I have to rush. So many things to talk about here, to look out for, how to benchmark, but there will be a lot of R&D around it. So when we have enough time, probably with the boot camp, that we are looking at how it's going to work once a year with everybody, or at least twice a year. We will be able to go in depth on how to see those tests, those patch management, benchmark it with what is current. Because in some organizations, what we've come to see is that the Oracle category that you have as top 10 might be that you have 3 that are Oracle 19C, 4 that are Oracle 21C, 3 that are, in that category. So you need to go research on the current update of the patch management to complain about and to report as is if that control is effective or not. So the next thing that we will be looking at is access control. And you know, when Tony and Ganiel were talking, the emphasis were laid on this, and nobody can actually leave out access. Who has access to what in the organization? So in the context of Oracle, we want to find out if, we want to confirm if on access control, all the people that could log on and all the account on the proprietary account on Oracle itself, the password has been changed. So the first test, the auditor confirmed that default account password has been changed. And we all know that there are a lot of default accounts in Oracle. So I'll be doing a lot of things here to show you. There are a lot of default accounts in Oracle. So we want to know if at the end of the day it's been changed. Then we want to confirm if the ones that are not changed have been locked. That's the default accounts that are not in use. Because I know there are some Oracle default accounts that talks to HR. Can you see here? That talks to some other things. They all have their use. For more information, maybe we'll be provisioning links. This is one of the links that would work for you. If you look at this, let me maximize. You will see basically here that Oracle 9i and Oracle by default will always come with default accounts. And there are so many. And you know, if you're an auditor and you cannot do R&D, you cannot do your audit effectively. So you'll be able to see the username of those default accounts, default username, and the default password that comes with it. So even by yourself, you can log on to that Oracle platform to see if this password have not been changed. Or the other bit of it is you run the script to show you whether it has changed or not. And how do you do that? You see from the script here. I want to run the script I want. That's why I'm going down out. So let's test this too. Let's see if default password has been changed. Let's see if default accounts like they have been locked. And let's see if all the DB users. So let me talk about this. Principles of need to have. So we want to know all the users that are currently provisioned on Oracle database. This is where I am. So I want to now review those users on need to have all the accounts that are open. That's active accounts. Are they people that are here? Do we have active accounts that are proprietary to third parties? Do we have active accounts that are for support even in Oracle? So I'm running these three scripts to validate that exception. So what I see here is, so this is the first script on the one I said. So let me close this. This is the second to check if those default accounts are locked. And this is the one to review all accounts on Oracle. So at times, you may not do it one by one. This colon at the end of the day here on the script means you can run the three. You can run these three at the same time. So once you run the script at the same time, it gives you the three queries for you to check what has happened there. So let's look at it. You can see the first query on default account. If it returns nothing, that means it's been disabled. There's no default account. This is the first query. 1 second. Tony, you guys are making me rush. Anyways, if you run this is the first query. Nothing throwing up shows that all default account has been renamed. And if you look at the second query, what it tells you here is that all these accounts that comes by default has been locked to the system. So it's been done vividly well. And the top query simply shows you, which is this, simply shows you that this query here, all the DB users, all the users that have access to the DB. So you spool this out to check everybody according to their username, then separate them from systems accounts, from normal users account, then from privilege account. That's how I look at it. Then you benchmark those users with your leavers, joiners, and current staff list or movers list within the organization to see if the guys that are here are actually who they are. So that's one of the access control that you would have to do. So if you look at it, I haven't moved from there. Let's now look at access that has to do with privilege, least privileged. So there are some proprietary kind of table. You know, a database is a scheme, has a schema. And that schema, what is embedded in that schema is there are tables, different tables. There are tables that stores rows. There are tables that stores whatever record that the application that talks to the database is provisioned in there. However, there are some proprietary tables on the database that comes with Oracle themselves, which should, where those roles are limited to only database administrators. So you want to be sure from this thing to be sure that, okay, those tables are not those table spaces which are system. There's a sys and there is a system. So, and they are proprietary to Oracle. So you want to be sure that those support users that you can review. And you want to be sure that the DB users, these topics I have, cannot grant those tables that are privileged tables to support as an administrator to any user in the organization. And also you want to be sure that nobody in the organization have access to the tables of time. So those 4-in-1 tables are these. So from here, you can see here, I want to be sure that, so let me bring the 4 and run the script as once. 1 second. For the 4 tables, this is the output. So vividly where from table 1, you can see all the 6 accounts. Okay? These ones are privileged accounts. If these 2 are open, this second one that you see here is to show us who has access to systems and Cs, which should be the DBA, and it should be monitored. So you'll be able to know that for others, they are locked. The ones that, and it's not cast in stone. It depends on what you have in your policies. So these are privileged accounts that you want to know who has access to them. The second script now tells you the matrix that for all these people in this organization, there's a yes or no. Can the DBA, let me go to the DBA, can the DBA give access, yes or no? Can it delegate, yes or no? By default, does he even have access, yes or no? Then these 2 are inherited common things you don't need to know. So this matrix needs to be spooled out for you to now critically look at your privileged access users, which are the DBAs. Little will you know that some privileged users in your organization have escalated their privileges to even grant access. From experience, I've seen where they've granted access to a third party because of RDP. RDP, that's remote desktop provisioning, that led to even investigation. Okay, the DBA was a wrong recruitment in the sense that he doesn't really know database very well. So I investigated that issue with 2 other people. He now entered dubiously into the organization. And when he entered, because he couldn't work well, he granted all these roles to a named individual that can actually run remote sessions or the DBA anytime he has serious support issues to do, just to cover his weaknesses. So as an auditor, there is need for you to know the extent with which the privilege, this privilege has been given to the DBA, what he is doing with those privileges. Other forms of review can be through logs, but it's better to simplify it this way and whatnot. So the next thing is basically on, I'll run multiple scripts on that too. Let's talk about it. Ensure all default passwords are changed. We want to know that everybody, once they log on to the DB, they must change their default passwords. That's the password that has been advised. Then we want to ensure again that failed logon attempt, ensure failed logon attempt is less than 5. In this context means if you are trying to log on to my database, I want to be sure that by my policy, it's not cast in stone. If your policy stays 3 times, failed logon should be 3 times. I want you to ensure that you log the person out after 3 attempts to log on. This is just to limit the window of brute force attack. Then this one is, if my policy says you can only have access for 90 days, password lifetime, I was able to configure my database, the users of my database, to change their password within the stipulated time. Then this says reusable. You know, when everybody will say in January, I'm using password 123, in February, I'm using 234, in March, I'm using 345. Even if you are using all those passwords and you're just changing the number behind, we want to be sure that you cannot reuse password 1223 that you used in January until after 20 times that you have changed it. That depends on your password policies too. Then the next one is session per user. I want to be able to say, okay, how many times do your session can only take you for how long? If I see that your session is going overly about a minute, it should not be unlimited. Overly about 10 minutes of inactivity. What should I do? I should time. So all these are basically, it depends on your password policy. So now, if I'm to just quickly check that, we'll be sharing all these scripts and everything to you. But once you have it and you have your environment to test, then little do you know, please don't let them deceive you in your organization. I've worked in some organization where they will tell you, you can't run this script on my DB. You can't, they are all select statements. It's just, and you have a read-only access. It does not stop them from giving you the access. So this is for default. These are the ones for the limits with which you can field logons, then the password lifetime, and the default time for 90 days. So I want to run all these together because of our time up to this so that we can see what the output will be. Sugar. Okay, so you can see, wow. Okay, let me run that again. 1 sec. I think there's an error.
Yeah, you did not copy the last quotation and semicolon.
Oh, okay.
You did not highlight it, yes.
Okay, thank you. So from here to here, okay. All right. Thank you, Ganil. So you can see from here, we'll be teaching you shortcuts. Can you see the reason why I put the quotation there is that you can run per instance. All these things I've put here, once you said, the reason why I said you should select your scope is that if you look at my script end to toe, I've written everything here. I can run everything at once and it gives me an output and I pull it to a CSV file. But I just needed to explain what each script means. That's why I'm running one after the other. So once you are done running it at once like that, you now go indoor, do your checklist to benchmark all that. So you can see the first one is showing that there's no default password. So everything, all the username have changed their password. The second one is talking about failed attempts. You can see that there's somebody by default. The failed attempt is 10. So if your limit is 5 and somebody is saying, you are saying greater than 5, we want to know. The limit that was set is 10, is an exception. So you raise it in your report. Then if you look at the third issue here that we said 90 days for a necessary password change. Nobody is set to have, okay, you see that password lifetime is set to unlimited. So people, that means you have people by default, they are unlimited on once they log on, they have unlimited access. They don't change their database. Or in some organization, they leave it at unlimited because the database authentication is by their AD. So it authenticates with AD. So once you change your AD, Active Directory password, it automatically syncs to the AD, to the databases. Then on the last note, the one on number of reusable, you can see reusable here is 10. So whatever your policy says, that you can't reuse after 10 times that you have used it. That's what we have under that bit. So running on the faster lane again.
Okay,
look at what I'll do. Okay, let me just talk through hardening. Okay, yeah, let me just talk through hardening. Okay, so here are all default settings from Oracle. Oracle have said, ensure these guys are like this, ensure remote OS_auth. Nobody can remotely access the OS of your DB. Ensure that you set audit operations, set it to true. So whatever you run here gives you the output. So when you're looking at the document, when you have it, know the meaning. Ensure that no users are assigned with default role default profile. And all the default profiles are here from Oracle because they are sys account privileges, privileged account. You must ensure no user except the DBA is, and the DBA is also piped to audit, such that in case there's something or any issue you can do, then you revoke access by the DBA to grant anybody any of those super admin rights. Then make sure your data link has audit enabled. And the other bits have been talked about under governance. So having talked about this, I'll be moving to another. Tony, are you saying we should not talk about SQL?
No. Sheyi, we are out of time. It's also important that we don't keep people beyond the 1 hour 30 minutes that we had actually agreed on. I think that's a struggle. So what we'll do, we're going to share this with us. We'll share the slides. We'll share the materials. Can you bring up the page such that they can see the LinkedIn page where we'll drop these materials for their consumption, as well as the YouTube link.
So would you mind if I just quickly show that this?
Okay, guys, can we do an extra 10 minutes? Would that be fine? Just so that we can show you something around SQL.
Yes,
would that be fine?
That's fine.
I'm very sorry about for this. We didn't think that we would okay, yes, okay. Somebody saying extra 30 minutes. Okay, Sheyi, can we let's
yes.
quickly
So here, what we'll be sharing, why I asked for this. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, please?
Yes, please go ahead.
So why I asked for 10 minutes is just so when you have the material, it will be easier for you to use. So we've been able to break it down to other SQL to tell you what the control objective we are testing, the script on its own, the output you should expect. Then these 2 columns are for you when you carry out your audit. So if for all of you, it's not cast in stone. You can use if your environment is cards, there are also other things. Me, I luckily find myself in a card environment now, so I've added other scripts I need to check for PCI DSS compliance, for all that. So for here, what you need to do is that the same way, I don't need to talk you through them. By default, what you should know about all these SA accounts, you understand? All this SA account, it depends on you. This is version. We talked about version before. Once you run it, check the patch level from the site, go to all those URLs that can basically give you that. I think I am going to be sharing that. So there are 4 URLs under, this is it, where you can check the KB, that's the patch level of where you are in the organization. This is for SQL Server 2012. Check the patch life cycle. So there's even one of the URL under Microsoft site documentation where you can even know the date, the version, the start date, the end date, for you to do the screenshot as part of what you'll be using as your evidence during the audit. So you benchmark with that. So that handles everything under patch management. Then your SA account is peculiar, your server admin account. It depends on what your policy says. So some people, you do it dual control, your the DBA and a control person will write their password on a sheet of paper. They give it to legal saves it. Then they now disable that access and grant that access to the database administrator and a secondary asset of somebody that can deputize as probably a succession plan of the DBA. So in case there's anything, they use the DBA, the database account, to enable the SA, which is the overall. Then to some people, they leave it on, but it is actually very wrong to leave it enabled because it's an account that can do a lot of things. So it is sys and system for Oracle. It's a server admin SA account that must be disabled to some organization or renamed, because it's no longer, it can be exploited. Then on authentication is basically what you have set on your password policy, authorization and authentication. All these scripts are the things that you should run to validate your policies to see if those things are done. And the reason why I came here is that I said I need to show this is that for password policies, under this place, all these ones are not even scripts enabled. you have to use a GUI. There are GUI approaches to check on them. Then there's an audit bit where you can look at it. So I have I've been notified I have few minutes more. So for your password, this is where you come. You just open up the database, go to your the security setting. I'm on the left side here. Go to your logins. You'll be able to see all the people that have access to your DB. If the person does not have access to your DB, or whatever is disabled would have this sign up here or a cancel. So you can see Tony is here. I don't know what he's doing here. Ife is here. Ife Bambi. I don't know what Ife is doing here. I need to find out why Ife is here. I just need to right click and check the properties one by one so that you can take your screenshots to know what these people that have been given access, what do they do? Confirm the roles. Okay, was password enforced, password change enforced. Does it expire? Can you see that the first password is overly? So this is an exception. You do a screenshot of it, then easily you can see your password policy here on the GUI. Then that's graphics user. Then you can also check the server roles. Why is he a systems admin and he has a name auditor? He's an auditor. Instead of them to give him a reader, a read-only access with the public access, he was given a sysadmin is an exception. Then you cannot check all the mappings. What tables, what can you do? They say database roles, what can you do in the public? And you can, what it should be doing alone is data reader. Now, it's owning the data, and it also has a public interface to the network permissions that was earlier spoken by Ganil. So you can take your time to look at it and benchmark everything you see here on password policies on the GUI with your role. Another thing again that you can look at is audit. So you come to management, you have to come check what you have under logs. You see, when you explode your logs, you can see the logs. Right click on what you have on logs to get a view of what has been set on your databases. Here, you'll be able to know. Once you see this view, you know vividly well what has been happening. This is an AWS instance, and while we were having a dry run, testing all we need to show, you can see all the activities we've been doing. So you can check it to see all the settings that you have on database logs and how it is integrated to the SIEM. You will see everything here on the instance or AWS or on the server for Azure, whatever cloud platform that you are using. So what else do I want to show here? On the go, when you copy all the necessary scripts, all you just need to do is to Control A, everything at once here. Just Control A, everything at once, and execute. Once you execute, wow. Okay, once you execute, you have it. So let me just do, I can't troubleshoot where I've missed where there's a bug, but you can see here what happened. I just ran for the top 4, and you can basically see here what comes up, the version. Is SA disabled? Yes, it is disabled. Nobody's using the account. You know all that. The principal account is set to 1. Is an exception that there's an SA account that is set to 1 and probably has owned by the DBA and all that. So we cannot exhaust it. But by God's grace, hopefully we'll look for a bootcamp where we will look at what this would achieve for us in the long run, taking it step by step. But how do I want to wrap up in 30 seconds? There are other things. There's what we call cards. There are database audit tools that are proprietary. Which one have I seen before? I think I've seen the big 4. Some of the big 4 have worked with some organizations to get their own scripts. There are some tools, some proprietary tools that tailors to an OEM. They get their own scripts that speaks to different database structure. They come to your environment, depending on the engagement, run those scripts on your infrastructure, then go back to that tool. It is dedicated to them. So there are also other means. If you're on a long time, you work in an organization where there are several databases. It would be good for you to have a journey where you have in-house an audit command kind of tool that is proprietary to you. You go to these databases, run the scripts and you zip it and you put it on the tool, and it automatically gives you the exceptions like the NIPA Studio for network, like the all of that management tools that you know for all these databases. So it's not cast in stone, but this is just something that should just show us the manual way of or semi-automated way of reviewing those things. I believe I've been able to do justice to the 10 minutes, and apologies if I've exceeded it, because time management is key. Thanks, guys. Tony, over to you.
You have. Thank you very much, Sheyi. Thank you, Ganiu. And thank you guys for being part of this. For those of us asking for the WhatsApp link, it has been dropped on the chat, right? For those of us who are not following the LinkedIn page, the link for the LinkedIn page where we'll be dropping this content is also attached. Please follow. The YouTube channel is also there. Follow and turn on notification so that you are aware once we drop any content. We will share the slides and all the content by next week, right? You should have that by next week. I don't know if we have any questions. So we'll take, say, 3, 4, or 5 questions max, and we'll call it a day. We have done above, this is 13 minutes now. It's not in our nature, right? It's not in our nature. So any questions? Any clarifications? Thank you, Aziz. This says, well done. Thank you. Abiba says she's just coming in. Yes, the recording will be available. We'll share the links for you to either, if you're interested in. So the WhatsApp group is a community where basically we share information. We try to support each other's career growth. So you're on a job, you're struggling with what to do, you don't know how to go about it, just drop a message on the WhatsApp link. Tons of folks who are experienced in that area will be more than available to support you. So I'll call it a support group. We also share job openings depending on your jurisdiction. We are based in Nigeria, so the jobs we share are basically Nigeria and mostly the UK as well. We have a couple of folks who also share jobs in the US, right? So yes, if you can join, it will be a fantastic place to be. We also share a lot of content on the LinkedIn page, Cyber Tech Assurance and Advisory, and then we upload all videos. So if you check the YouTube page, you'll see some of the videos we've had on API auditing, on network security, on cloud security. You'll find all of that on the YouTube page. Someone raised a hand to ask a question. I think was it Ido? Sorry, I can't see. So any questions? Presentation is to reach for someone. Okay, thank you, Kamaruddin. Thanks for the organizer. Thank you. The WhatsApp link has been shared. That's what is displayed on your screen at the moment. Okay, so I take it that there are no questions, right? What other databases are not popular like File? Okay, for other databases that are not popular like FileMaker database, what is your best advice when reviewing it? FileMaker. Okay, I'm just hearing about that.
Tony, I think Sadat's hand is up. Sadat.
Okay, Sadat, please go ahead. But let me answer Ademola. FileMaker database. The question would be, does your institution have a policy or a hardening standard for FileMaker? What we've tried to do is speak to some of the popular databases. I've not really heard about FileMaker, but the procedure is still the same thing. You look at access control, look at privileged access. You want to look at backup. You want to look at issues around configuration. So they may not be as standard as Oracle and MySQL, but definitely you have to look through all these domains to provide assurance around it. Okay, Sadat, go ahead with your question.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, Sheyi, and thank you to the facilitators for the wonderful session. So my question goes to Sheyi about the passwords policy and the audit around it. So you mentioned that for the password policy, you majorly you can use the GUI. So the question is for third-party audits, audit for third party or for a third party auditing that DB, they might not be given access to that particular database to do all the password password audit that you showed us. So how
Sure.
best do you think that can be approached from a
It's
third
embedded
party
in the
point of
scripts.
view?
So the scripts that you
Okay.
are sending it speaks to some tables on configuration. There are some tables that speaks to access control out of your script. So it picks up permissions and authorization as well as the password configuration. So you can get it from the script.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other question? Okay, Chukwemeka says the first speaker mentioned that the best practice is to keep database server and web server separate. Can we achieve this by using virtual machines? Absolutely, we can. Absolutely, we can. We can. We can. Femi is saying, I have the same question. Should guest accounts be disabled? Yes, the whole idea around knowing what account to enable or disable still boils down to these principles of need to have and least privilege. What is the guest account there for? Who is making use of the guest account? Who do I hold accountable should anything go wrong? How do I manage accountability? What privileges do these people or these guest accounts have on the system? Those are the things that should guide either we are saying a yes or a no to either enable or disable those things, right? Okay.
But I want to throw you on the spot. I think month in, month out, questions comes on VMs. I think we should be looking at how to audit in virtual machine clusters and all that. I think we need to look at that to add more value.
Okay.
Then there's a question from Abiba that is saying, what is the difference between a server and a DB? And I think you should see it from the screen that I shared before. Legitimately, sorry, one sec. So you can see here, let me try and share something. You can see from this screen here, this is a server. This is server 2012. It's written boldly on it. And on that screen, on that same screen, you can see vividly well that you can open the server and put a database. You put a database on this server. So there's a database, you need to install a database on this server, and from it, you can now put all record syncs to it. Can you see? This is where SQL Server 2012. So your record, so this server is proprietary or dedicated to be a database. So a server is the house, and you now create rooms there or a room there that pipes in whatever record that comes from any application on that database. So that's the difference between a server and a database. I hope that answers your question. We can move to the next one.
Okay, Terms is, oh, wow, the questions are coming in. I hope I've not missed anyone. Terms is saying, what are the major audit concerns around database migration and legacy database management? In fact, this is also a big deal, and I'll share an example. During a database migration from one to the other, people, because of the kind of privileges they had, they were able, there was this vendor who was able to update a staff account or a customer account because of the kind of privileges that they had. So the major audit concerns would be the kind of privileges that they have, right? And then ensuring that they are actually migrating those tables to their rightful positions, even on the database. But the major issue really is around access control, Okay, what type of certification can you recommend for someone that wants to become a database auditor? So for system auditors, basically, is It will be the Certified Information System Auditor. Now, you see, what CISA does for you, it tells you what to do, right? What we try to do in our sessions is how to do it. So even though you get certified in CISA, is very good.
Hello, Tony.
Because
Hello, Tony. I don't know. Can you hear me?
yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. Okay. So I was saying, even though CISA tells you what to do, you also need to know how to do it, right? CISA is not going to tell you some of the things, oh, run this script and all of that, but you may know that, well, in auditing databases, you need to look at access control, you need to look at backup, you need to look at configuration management, blah, 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 but they're not likely going to tell you how. But it's important that you even know the what to do, right? Okay. Do you use the same approach?
Hello, Tony. I don't know if you can hear me, Tony.
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Hello. Okay, so as to the question of data migration, I know that you've spoken about access control. Another bit that is really very important in data migration is also, as for us auditors, is also the integrity of the data. That's the data validation. So as what data is being moved from point A to point B, do you know the data in point A? And then when it is moved to point B, you have to ensure that that data has not changed. Because if that data changes, then as there are issues. So as that's another major audit concern as when it comes to data migration. Then he also asks a question on legacy database management. For legacy, the answer for legacy database management is that you should ensure that any controls that you have on your current databases, as that you're also maintaining those same controls on your your legacy databases. So you have to make sure that access control there's authentication, authorization, your monitoring, everything is being done the same way as that you have it on your current databases, as that you also have it for your legacy databases. You can continue to I'm done.
Okay. Someone is asking, do you use the same approach for autonomous DB or cloud-based database audit? For cloud-based database audit, yes, you should. Autonomous DB, again, the whole idea around it being autonomous is that it makes use of machine learning to even self-correct itself. I attended a session on autonomous DB, and it was practically saying, look, you don't even need to audit it because it identifies the flaws and then it corrects itself. If it's not patched, it sorts out itself. If there's a configuration error, it sorts out itself, maybe based on some of the hardening standards that you would have built in. So it makes use of machine learning. And the worry was that, will we still have jobs if that comes into play? I'll allow Alexi answer that question. Okay, I think we need to run now. We've done almost 2 hours. Almost 2 hours. So let's take the conversation to LinkedIn or on the WhatsApp chat for those of us that would be interested in joining. Thank you so much for joining us this month. Next month, we'll be looking at possibly operating systems. We'll share that update again on our LinkedIn page and on WhatsApp. Thank you so much for joining us, and let's all have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye, guys. Thanks for joining. So you have the link to Ifeoluwa Ogunbambi just dropped the link to the WhatsApp group. Just click, you can copy and paste it, send it to your WhatsApp, then click on it, then you automatically join. Then if you're having difficulty, just drop your phone number here. Drop your phone number here. We are taking records. You can send a private chat to the host and co-host you can see up here. We'll copy and automatically add you to the team, to the group chat. Or you have the link that takes you there directly. Thank you.
Yeah, hello Shay.
Yeah.
So quick one, in some environments, we have automated tools for database auditing. For instance, in Power, And I know you've shared a lot of scripts on auditing databases. So I don't know if you are well familiar with Empower and the output it gives when you try to audit a DB. So comparing what you've shared and likely outputs you've seen using Empower, which do you advise is best, like doing this manually or combining both?
So combining both, I would say that's a very powerful question. You can review Empower to know the gaps of Empower. So how do you do that? You do, there may be false positives coming from it. There may be where your auditees will not contest. You don't need to wait till they do that. So what you do is run manual, run this semi-automated approach, run Empower, look at what you have as differential to know the weakness of that tool. So you will be helping the OEM. So when you're now doing your scope, your audit work program, you now know that, okay, for this area, you know, your tool is weak in that aspect. I'll have to use this semi-automated approach. So that's how, because I've also used some proprietary what's called database tools like that, but because of false positives and the likes at times, even some of them comes out at times to tell you there are no exceptions, and you'll be surprised. Some will throw up exceptions that are not real. So it's expedient to just review the application itself to be sure if it's giving you the right answer. So it's good to combine both.
Hello, Sheyi. Can I take a shot at that question?
Yes, go ahead, Ghanaian.
Yeah, so I've actually used Impever before. One of the major drawdowns in my experience while using Impever is that Impever relies mostly on some non-frameworks like PCI DSS, CIS benchmark, NIXT. However, the values there will not be localized to your environment. For example, in line with NIST, it tells you password expiration is 180 days. And your own policy is saying 30 days. No, in that instance, your policy overrides that NIST benchmark requirements. So the best way you can derive value is to customize your own scripts or your own runs on Impever. It has that feature of customization so that you leverage on the CIS benchmark and customize it to tune what is required in your own immediate environment. Then it becomes a better tool for source scanning.
Perfect. Yeah, right on track. Yomi, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, sure.